public schools, and they do have a good program. What I notice is there's a huge vacancy between high school and any chance of them getting a job or getting to the place where they can find a job. There's it's just not connected yet, but they're working on it. And that's an important area, much more important area than them trying to what Andy calls indoctrinate instead of educate.
Yeah,
and that's what we're looking. Is Andy on the line?
He is.
Andy, I want to thank you for coming.
Sir.
I want to thank you for coming and joining us tonight. I give you a little promo on you on introduction. I understand. How long have you been? Well, first of all, tell us about the books that you're talking to us about.
Well, the books I was specifically talking to you about are actually elementary age stuff. These are actually, those big, thick board books that you got, right?
Yes.
Right? These big, thick board books.
Mm-hmm.
In Wentzville School District was the first one we found one in, and thankfully it only took them. It took them a little bit, but once it became public knowledge, they actually pulled the book back out. But they were using a book. This is a new series that came out, and the people that wrote it are all out of New York City. Imagine that. And their child development, I know, right? And they're child development experts, right? These are supposed to be, one of them's a child development educator, PhD, alphabet after her name. The other one's a public library. She works with a public library with children in reading and early childhood reading. I was like, okay. So if you look at the bios, it looks great. You look at the first book they came out, and the title of it is Our Skin, A First Conversation About Race.
Yeesh.
Now, you said you have, you got an elementary, you got a 5-year-old, right?
I do. Mm-hmm.
So I want you to play this little game with me.
Uh-oh.
You got your little 5-year-old sitting around, and they're doing story time in kindergarten, because these books are rated for pre-K to second grade. Mm-hmm. So your little kids sitting around and all the little kids sitting around, and the teacher's reading this book. And the first part is not too bad. It's, color, where people get the color in their skin. It's a chemical called melanin. And I was good with that. I was good with most of it until I turned over to this page. Now imagine your teacher reading to your child. A long time ago, way before you were born, a group of white people made up an idea called race. They sorted people by skin color and said that white people were better, smarter, prettier, and they deserved more than everyone else. That is a direct quote out of the book.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy.
Now, what's that going to do to the children? And that's what I was talking about is indoctrination, not education. Because now imagine that little boy sitting next to his best friend, and one's African American and one's white. What's that going to do to that friendship and that dynamic when their teacher, who you know as well as I do, kindergartners, first graders, there's God, then there's the teacher, then there's the parents, then there's everybody else, right? I mean, they revere their teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's that going to do to those two friends? What's it going to do to that friendship? You think you're better than me? You think you're smarter than me? Right. The other kid's going to be looking at them. I don't think like that. I promise. Well, that's not what the teacher just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super offensive on a number of levels.
I was going to say, I would be offensive as the white person there to think that.
Oh yeah.
Somebody tell me that. I mean, this.
I'm offended, and I'm Hispanic. I mean, that's crazy. So,
everybody knows I'm not smarter than Jasha. So.
And the interesting part about that was, white people invented race. That is not even right.
Not even
it's
close.
Not even true.
No.
Because race is just race. I mean, that's just
race has been around since forever.
Centuries. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking, at least what that we can record 5,000 years ish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of fossil. It's kind of hard, and to put that dynamic like that. Just for me, with my background, which is really weird, I actually worked, after I retired from the military, I worked in Africa. I spent about 9 years hunting terrorists with allied nations in Africa, basically showing local nationals how to find, locate, and target terrorists.
Cool job.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And what branch of the military were you in?
I'm 23 years Army retired.
Oh, nice. Okay.
that-
I was in the
yeah.
Army for 5 years. Just 5.
Yeah.
Just 5.
I did.
Go ahead.
I did 23 years in the Army. Then I retired, and I was going to I'm going to fill out my stuff for disability and all of this. And it was going to take too long at that time. VA was slower than Christmas, and I beat my body up. And I was like, okay, well, I got to have a JOB. And one of my buddies called me up and said, "Hey, man, you ever thought of doing contract work?" And I'm, okay.
Yeah.
What what's it entail? Well, starting pay is about,
Bunch.
starting pay is a solid 6-figure salary. I was like, a year? That's cool. Oh no, that's 6 months, bro.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah, you don't stay over there the whole year. You rotate back and forth. I was like, okay, I can do that for a few years. But the whole point of this is, while I was doing that, I was working in countries where a lot of the times I was the only white guy on the military installation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was the only one. And this narrative that's being told to children right now that only white people can be racist, you are out of your mind, because I live the opposite. I was absolutely racially profiled and had blatant racism against me because I was the white guy, and everybody else was, Nigerian or, Mauritanian or Ugandan, depending upon what country I was in. And I'm like the lone white dude. So, yeah, what they're trying to push down our kids' throat and push the narrative in this country right now is so incorrect. I mean, it is absolutely such a false narrative.
What about the other two books you have, Andy? What are they?
Well, I got two other ones. One of them isn't. It's not as blatant, but it's a first conversation about consent.
I like that.
And,
Oh, brother.
Okay. Mm-hmm. No, come on.
But, yeah. First conversation about consent. And, first of all, we have to know our body parts. And that's where it really got to me. I mean, I flip open page 1 and, you're sitting there and here's a bunch of pictures on page 1 of the book. And it's got, I'm learning all the names of my body parts. And it's got all these different pictures of kids, belly button, butt, vulva, elbow, nipples, penis.
Vulva's
and it's a little
on there?
naked.
Wait.
minute,
Vulva's on there?
Oh, yeah. And then penis is on there with a little naked boy with his little penis hanging out.
What?
So
This is
now
kindergarten.
This is preschool. This is preschool to second grade. All right.
Okay.
So your kindergartner is going to come home and know what a penis is. I've got a second grader right now. If I find out my second grader knows what a penis is, I'm having a conversation with somebody that is not going to be real comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Because my 7-year-old daughter better not know what a penis is.
Oh, look at
What's a 5-year-old?
Well, I think you're hitting a good point, because I think it's really dependent on the parents, right? I mean, these are values, these are conversations that you should have with your children in private. This is not up to the government.
Yes, that's the whole point. This whole consent thing, and I mean, it doesn't. It alludes to. Well, it actually says in the book that everybody should ask permission before hugging or touching you, including mom and dad. So, I mean, there's stuff like that in the book. It's like, wait a minute, I got to ask permission to touch my child, and you're telling them at 5th. Okay, what's that going to do to the home dynamic? No, I'm the disciplinarian in my home. And I mean, my daughter does something that's bad enough, and, corporal punishment still works in my house. I'm kind of Old Testament guy, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I don't use a rod, but I'll absolutely put hand upside butt if the situation warrants, right?
Well, that's worked for centuries. I think that's the truth.
It has worked with me.
They got all this new finagled stuff, but it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, that's worked.
But that kind of leads to something too. Also, it says like if the school tells the children that your parents have to have permission to hug you, then of course if your parents hug you, there has to be a reporting process. So they're
going to tell exactly. They're going to go tell the teacher, "Well, Mom hugged me, Dad spanked me without my permission." Bam! There you go. There's your hotline.
Yeah.
And there goes the wedge between the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. This is, and it's what you said. This is a conversation that should be happening at home between mom and dad. I am getting and one of the things that I really see with this, and call me crazy if you want, but I look at that and that book. So, okay, we're going to have a girl talking about her vulva and a boy and a picture of a naked boy and a penis in kindergarten, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are school districts that there is a recommended national sex education standard out there that by third grade, they want children, third graders, to be able to describe both male and female masturbation.
Whoa.
Yes,
that's in.
No. That's recommended. It is not required. It's recommended, but it was funded by our tax. Third grade. They got to be able to describe masturbation.
Now, is that in Missouri? Is that what are we talking about?
No, Missouri, we have not found any school districts specifically using that or at least admitting to in Missouri, but it is a recommended national sex ed standard.
From the Department of Department of Education.
It's recommended, and it wasn't put out by the Department of Education. They contracted a second company to do it, right?
Gotcha.
So, no, it's not put out by the Department of Education, but we're recommending it.
Yeah. We wrote
because your tax dollars paid for it.
Yeah, they wrote the platform. Yeah, so that's.
Mm-hmm.
This is brave new world, seriously.
So, and then like those national sex education standard, you go one step further. By sixth grade, children are supposed to be able to describe anal, oral, and vaginal sex.
Oh.
I was retarded in school. I mean, that's sixth grade?
Sixth grade.
Oh, God. And this is what okay.
This is what the alt left is pushing.
Oh, yeah.
And
exactly.
that's how I will frame it. This is what the alt left is pushing.
Okay.
They want to push this narrative. And if everybody's wondering, now I've got a list of books. I've got a list of 25 books that are slam dunk, guaranteed 100% meet the state definition of either pornography and or child pornography that are in over 160 schools in the state of Missouri. I have it all documented.
What is your website name?
Our national website is No Left Turn in Education.
No Left Turn in Education. Okay.
No Left Turn in Education.us. Okay. That's our national website. In Missouri, I use my Facebook page for all correspondence and everything.
Okay.
And it's No Left Turn in Education Missouri on Facebook.
Okay.
And but I've got the documents. I've shared it with the legislators. I have a lot of the conservatives are really ticked off, but they're trying to figure out how do we get these books that contain the state definition of pornography out of schools without and still be able to teach sex ed, because there has to be a carve out. And that's where all of this came through. Well, a long time ago in 1980s, they said, hey, you got to teach sex ed in school because of the HIV virus, right? Because of AIDS. When they did that, every state made a carve out of some way to talk about sex in schools. Well, every state law that made that carve out, all of them are a little bit different than each other. But what it did is it opened up a doorway that nobody realized until recently. Again, these alt-left folks figured out, hey, we can start pushing these books in. So you have books like The Bluest Eye. Have you heard of it?
No,
Maybe read it?
No, tell me about it.
All right. Book called The Bluest Eye. It's written by Toni Morrison. She is a Pulitzer Prize, she has the Nobel Prize in Literature. She has a Pulitzer Prize. I mean, this is an accomplished writer. Mm-hmm. Wrote a bunch of different books. Mm-hmm. I've only got problems with one of her books, The Bluest Eye. It was written in 1970. It's about a, I think it was pre-World War II era urban black family, right?
Yeah.
And it is, it's got graphic scenes of sex throughout the book, a couple of different ones before you get, which I think is probably one of the most egregious. The main character in the book, who is 11 at the time, is raped by her father until she passes out. They take 2 pages to describe the rape scene, and yes, it's in detail. Later in the book, oh yes, and that's in our public schools. That's in our middle schools in the state of Missouri, in several of them. Later in the book, it has confessions of a pedophile where he is talking about he prefers little girls because they're so much cleaner. He can give them an ice cream cone and they can eat their ice cream while he plays between their legs and plays with their nipples like erasers. That's straight out of the. Oh yes. I mean, I'm trying to keep it clean on for you guys.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
we appreciate that.
Thank you. Now, what are these? Are these part of the educational process?
Well, some of them, and that's the problem is some of these are actually used. Some of them are actually used in English classes to write reports.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here.
So they're in the school libraries. We'll find this.
Oh yeah. All these books are in the school library. All 25 of them. I got the libraries they're in, and the school districts are in. I got a nice little matrix, and I'm giving it around.
I got a question, Andy, because I don't know if most people know this, but the books that are in the schools have to be vetted, right, by the Department of Education, by some kind of board, or no? Or are they? No. Are these random? What I'm saying is are these books?
How do they get in there?
Yeah, how do they get in there? Are these books just by people that work at the school and decide they're going to throw some books in there, or are these actually vetted through? Are they on some kind of list?
School district.
Okay, and from talking to multiple librarians in the state, this is how it usually works. The National Library Association puts together a big, massive list that they send out every year. On their big, massive list, they send it out to the states. The State Library Association looks at that list, and it's broken down into school list and public library list, right? Mm-hmm. They look at the school list, and they pare it down a little bit, and they send it out to the schools. Then your school librarian's getting this list from the State Librarian Association saying, hey, these have got to be vetted books. They go through and they look at what they have in their library. They look at what their budget is. They figure out how many copies and which books they want or don't have in their library. They pick what they want, shove them in there. They put them on an order form. It goes into a school budget, which most school budgets, I mean, even school districts with only 800 kids have a multi-million-dollar budget. So what's a line item on a multi-million-dollar budget for 20,000 in books, 30,000 in books? School board's not paying attention. Nobody's looking at it. They don't vet it. Oh yeah, they want 30,000 for books. They order the books. You know, you get into the big school districts where they have $150 million budget. Okay, they're spending $100,000 on school books. They don't care. That they're not concerned about that. They're concerned about the new buildings they have to build and all the big ticket items. So they approve it. It gets ordered. They come in. They throw a sticker on it. Put it in the computer, throw it on a shelf, and your kids are reading it. Meanwhile, nobody has actually read the darn book. They're just taking a recommendation by the National Library Association.
Well, I know the public libraries are terrible. I mean, I could tell you that right now. I mean,
in the National Libraries,
public library, and it's just like there's so many horrendous things in there.
What is there any legislators that you're working with in Missouri that's helping out on this?
Oh, yes. Senator Bratton has tried a couple of times, and he's had some stuff that he's brought up. He's probably one of the most proactive senators they're working on. The House is a lot easier. The House, they don't have a problem passing this stuff and getting it through. The Senate's our problem. Mm-hmm. And Senator Bratton is fighting this fight, and and he is fighting tooth and nail for it. And meanwhile, there's a lot of other ones that just don't have the appetite for it. And I don't know if it's political pressure. I'm not sure if it's political pressure. I'm not sure if it's just, okay, there's outside influences, which there are. I mean, every time any of those, blocking pornography on computers, Senator Bratton brought that up, Protect Children Online Act, which would actually block pornography for minors at the ISP, at the actual starting point, right? Everybody would have to have a code to get on there, and it would change. So it made great sense to me. I was like, why but there are people behind the scenes pushing back against that because they don't want that. They don't want to stop pornography. They don't want to stop sexualization of kids.
Yeah.
The left don't.
And it's happening more.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're almost out of time, but I just wanted to, give you the last word. We really appreciate everything you're doing for this issue because I think it really needs to be talked about. I understand that you present to groups. Is that true? I mean, do you have? I have traveled literally all over the state. Okay.
I'll tell you right now, my email address is andywells@nolefturn.us. I'll put it out there publicly.
Great.
I don't care.
Yes.
Get a hold of me. I've talked to parents groups. I've talked to conservative groups. I've talked to schools. I go to school board meetings. I am doing everything I can because it's not just this. It's all of this crazy alt-left stuff that they're pushing in. The last book I didn't even get to talk about was Being You, where it basically says you get to choose your gender.
Tell you what, Andrew, I want you to come back after the session is over and after there's a lawsuit at Springfield, I think, with the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And we'd like to discuss this with you further. We're out of time for today. But we do appreciate you coming on air with us and sharing what you're up against and what the parents need to know about what's available.
This is a nationwide fight, and there are over 28 parent groups across the state of Missouri fighting this fight. Okay. I belong to a national 501, a national nonprofit, so I give them a voice at the Capitol. But there are parents fighting this fight in school districts across the state, and I just want to thank them for the efforts to trying to fight back against this craziness.
So do we.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for everything you do.